Flip Pallot, nice bend back with a mono body. I'm going to run you through the process of tying it. First of all, if you don't know how to bend a hook correctly for a bend back, I recommend looking back at one of my older videos that discusses bending the hook properly. You start off with heavy 3/0 Flymaster thread, Flymaster Plus, in a light olive color. The body is a bit of a pain in the butt to build, but it isn't too bad a fly to start to finish. You want a good solid base for what comes afterwards. Trim off my tag. First thing we're going to do is tie in some 25-pound Berkley big game monofilament, a clear mono. We want to tie this all the way down the hook. Now if you notice, I'm tying this quite a ways back into the gape of the hook. The reason being, it covers up all of the body once you put the wing on it. That's why I tie it so far back. Okay, this is gold holographic Flashabou. It's a gold Mylar, I should say, but a holographic one. I'm going to tie that in the back. And then I'm going to bring everything, my thread, back up to the front. Now, I park the monofilament in my material clip. It just makes it a little easier to work with. I'm going to coat the thread body now with a pretty good layer of Dave's Fleximent. And I'm going to reverse palmer this Mylar Tinsel. I'm going to make a barber pole effect. Try to keep it fairly tight and consistent. Tie that off. Now, because the body is so far back, you know, you could snell this, but since it's so far back into the gape of the hook, you've got to kind of at least get it started. Palmering this monofilament over the top of everything. I'm going to switch over to my rotary when I get clear of the gape. This is the part that's kind of the pain in the rear. You know, if this was a simple glass minnow, you could just snell the whole thing, but you know, a glass minnow is just up on the top of the shank. When you start getting back into the back of the gape of the hook like this, snelling is just damn near impossible. Okay. rest of the way. And get that monofilament tied down. And it's important not to use your good scissors. I use a pair of cutters to cut the monofilament. Okay, the body on this is done now. I'm going to reverse it in the vise so I can tie my wing. And I'm going to whip finish the 3/0 Flymaster Plus off. And I'm going to switch over to 6/0 to tie in the hair. And light olive. Get a good thread base down. We're going to start with white bucktail. It's important not to overdress this fly. Fairly sparse. Measure my length. Trim it off. Get that white tied in. Second is a nice green. You want to use about half as much as you did in the first step with the white. Fairly sparse again. About the same length. And get that tied in. Okay, the next material is called Fish and Floss. It's an olive Flashabou like material, or Gliss and Glow, I'm sorry. Any kind of olive crystal flash would work, or olive Flashabou. We're going to put that in on top. Give it a little dab of glue. Just get everything locked down. And the final color is a dark brown. Measure that off. Get that all tied in. And the very last, I'm using gold holographic Flashabou over the top. A couple of 2 or 3 strands. Tie that in. Kind of clip that off a little bit. Okay, I'm going to build my head. Get a nice smooth head. Okay, I'm going to whip finish that. Give it a dab of glue. This day's Fleximent is what I use for this. Okay, this fly is pretty much done. The only steps that I follow through on is, if you notice on the head on this fly, I put a little bit of the UV epoxy in the front just to kind of seal everything up and make sure that it stays locked down. Then I paint a yellow eye with a black pupil on top of the epoxy. That's the only last two steps. This is a great fly for shallow water redfish. Hits the water pretty softly. Now I do keep a couple of extras in my box with slightly different heads, and what I do on those is, in addition to the mono tying down the shank of the hook, I'll put a piece of like 10 or 15 thousandths wire, lead wire, down the shank of the hook all the way. It'll help it sink just a little bit faster if you're in, say, over a foot of water. You could also do this with a sink tip, but really the best is to tie it without the lead and just let that fly settle. It's a good shrimp pattern and an outstanding fly. That's the Prince of Tides.